put outside her window when the Bnei Yisrael will come to attack Jericho, and she says, please give me the sign so that you shall give life to my father and my mother. Rav Nachman is suggesting that the essential avodah zarah of the people of Canaan was Taivas Mammon, and now Rochav is getting out of that, so she's asking for a sign of life, and she says to them, Unasatem li ois emes, give me a sign of truth, because truth is life. Truth is life. And they said to her, the two spies said to her, well, you must bind the tikvas chut hashoni. You must bind literally the hope of the thread of scarlet to your window. So what is the hope here is the hope that is given to us by emunah. Emunah gives us hope that even though things are dark now, in the end things will be good. And Emunah is the very end of days. Emunah corresponds to the sphere of Malchus, which is the last of all the spheres. And so when they were telling her to give this hopeful thread of scarlet, they were giving her Emunah. And they were giving her the attribute upon which everything else stands. As the rabbi said, that when the prophet Habakkuk came to reduce the whole of the Torah to one principle, that principle was the principle of Emunah. Now the thread of scarlet, was the concept of the shining of the light of the face. Thus we find that when Tamar in Genesis had the twins, so when Zerach put out his hand and the midwife tied a thread to his hand, so she called his name Zerach. So she was tying this thread to his hand. This was representing the shining of the light of the face. Because it says in Isaiah that even when darkness will cover the earth, Hashem will shine. So the darkness in the earth, which is the darkness that all of the prophets prophesied for the end of days, this darkness is the concept of the depression, the anxiety, the worry that is bound up with this passion for money and livelihood, which is twice the pain of the woman giving birth. This is the dark face, the idolatry. But the prophet says that even when the darkness shall cover the earth, V'olayich yizrach Hashem, upon you, Israel, with your emunah, upon you, Hashem will shine. This will be the emunah in God, the emunah that is helping us to receive the light of God's face. This is the emunah that was when Yaakov came to Shechem and he graced the face of the city. This is the repair of money, the repair of the currency, the repair of the desire for the lust for wealth. This is the whole concept of Zevulun going out with emunah to make parnasa with simcha. Yismach Zevulun will rejoice when you go out. Now we find in Gemara Brachos that the Gemara brings the famous apparent contradiction in the words of Shlomo HaMelech, Masa or Moitze. In one place he says that I find a woman more bitter than death, and in the other place he says that he praises the woman, and the woman is a symbol of parnasa. The Chazal said that if somebody encroaches on his friend's parnasa, it's as if that encroacher had relations with the wife of the suffering party. So this is an allusion to the fact that when Shlomo speaks about he finds the woman more bitter than death, or he finds the woman to be so great, there is an allusion to the concept of parnasa. And when parnasa is in a state of anxiety and pain because of the lack of emunah, that's when that's what Shlomo means when he says, I find the woman more bitter than death. This is the bitterness of the world that needs to be sweetened by the salt of the tzaddik. And on the other side, Shlomo says in Proverbs, Moto Isha Moto Tov, when you find a wife, you found goodness. Well, this is referring on the level of allusion to holy parnasa. which is quite the opposite, because Matzah Isha Matzah Tov, when a person finds his wife, namely his good parnasa, that he's found goodness, the Tov, the real goodness, is the tzaddik. This person has found the remedy in the tzaddik, who is the concept of the covenant of salt that comes to sweeten the bitterness of the lust for ever greater wealth, the constant anguished racing after livelihood. So parnasa, which is the concept of Zavulun going out with joy, this is the holy parnasa, is the concept of Shlomo HaMelech saying when a person finds a wife, he's found goodness. And the goodness is the tzaddik, which is the concept of the keeping of the covenant. So after this discussion, Reb Nachman now turns to one of the great guardians of the wealth of the Yehudi, and that is the mezuzah. The mezuzah, the Midrash asks, well, in Hebrew, why is money called zuzim? You know, Chad Gadya, the Zabin Abba Srei Zuzim, father bought the little kid for 2 zuz. Why are little coins in Hebrew called zuz? The reason is because they move from one to the other. Money is constantly going from one to the other. It's the means of purchase, the means of exchange in society. And this alluded to in the name of the mezuzah. The mezuzah is bound up with wealth. We put the mezuzah on the single most important part of all of our wealth, which is the home that we live in. We put it in the place of shelter, on the entrance to the home, on the gates of the home, and the very name of mezuzah is bound up with zuzim, with money, with the rectification of property. Well, now on the mezuzah is written on the outside of the scroll the name Shakai, Shin Dalet Yud. It is Minhag Yisrael to do this. And there is a verse in Eov where we are promised that if we will serve Hashem with faith, V'hoya Shaddai B'tzorecho, and Shaddai, the eternal God, will be your fortress. So the reason why the name Shaddai is written on the mezuzah is because through the mezuzah, the name of God is your fortress. You're putting your real fortress not in the walls of your house, but in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is protecting the walls of your house. And the verse continues in Job, where he's saying, if you'll be good, Hashem will be your fortress. The chesed to'ofois loch. The money will come flying to you. The silver will come flying to you. You'll be really successful and prosperous if only you will serve Hashem. And in other words, through the bringing of God's name into the house, in the Shaddai of the mezuzah, the parnasa, the livelihood, will come flying. Because the name, the holy name of Shaddai, is itself an allusion to the bris. Out of all of these spheres, the name of Shakai is bound up with the sphere of Yesod, which is bound up with the concept of the bris. And therefore, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Yaakov Avinu to be fruitful and multiply, he said, Ani kel Shakai perei uruvei. I am Shakai, and therefore you should be fruitful and multiply, indicating that Shakai is the concept of the bris, the concept of the covenant. And the Chachamim darshaned in Gemara Yerushalmi that the 10 Commandments, which we read last Shabbos, each one of them is contained in the Kriyas Shema. Even though the Shema does not outwardly appear to reflect the 10 Commandments, you can see throughout Kriyas Shema, each of the 10 Commandments has its corresponding section in the Kriyas Shema. And out of those 10 Commandments, the section of Shema, which is bound up with the 10th commandment, that you shall not fancy and desire the property of your friend, the Chazal said that this corresponds to the mitzvah of mezuzah in the Kriyas Shema. And the reason is that when the person has a valid kosher mezuzah, when they're bringing Shakai into the home through the mezuzah, Therefore, the person is rectified the